All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you had some really juicy discussion, and I'm looking forward to hearing some highlights. Do we still have, there's Brianna. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you, Brianna, to facilitate, and I'll work on capturing some highlight notes.
Awesome. Okay, well, I got to join a couple of groups. I feel like very fortunate that I got to bounce around a bit. So what we wanted to do is just kind of hear from everyone. I'm assuming that somebody was taking notes in each one of the breakout groups.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, okay, great. So we wanted to go ahead and kind of get a popcorn report out on each one of the questions. So if, let's see, maybe breakout group, do people know what breakout group number they were in?
Mm-hmm.
They do? Okay, great. Well then, who was in breakout group number 1? And would you like to offer any key, is that you, John?
Yeah, that's me.
Offer any key insights or takeaways from your group about what kind of experience your group has with local government, or what partnerships you're hoping to build.
Well, of course, I can't do it in a couple of minutes, but some of the core things were people talked about working with. I'm looking at my notes here, so forgive me. Working with local government and other sorts of local administrative groups directly to raise consciousness, and also to, if you live in an area where there's a lot of conservative governance, form your proposals in those terms, in the language that people that you're working with will be able to appreciate and understand and empathize with. We talked a lot about, one example that was mentioned a couple of times is working with local grange organizations, which often have farmers and other conservative types, in addition to transition people that might show up. There are things about working as an organization, as an official organization, transition organization with government. Sometimes requires a nonprofit status. You need to learn what the legal and political ins and outs are, or working with whatever local government structure you're a part of. Listening, Rua mentioned how important listening is, and this is in the same context of trying to build bridges with people that might not be on the same ideological page as you are. So just listening and empathizing with other people's viewpoints, and recognizing you may have caught them on a bad day the first time around, but next time you may find them a more receptive audience. I mentioned the necessity of being kind of like hip and up to date on social media communication, and in terms of websites and the LinkedIns and the Instagrams and all that, that have a presence there, because that's the way most younger people communicate on these days. Mm-hmm. Is that a good place to stop?
Yeah, well, it sounds like you moved into the skills as well. So that's great.
I mentioned the repair cafes that exist over in Sebastopol, where you can bring in stuff that isn't working and have somebody try and repair it. I've talked about permaculture and gardening and things like that. So I should pass the baton here.
Okay, well, thank you for that overview of both the questions. I appreciate that. How about from group 2, from breakout group 2? What did you guys gather?
That's me.
Okay.
Well, a lot of what John just said, we came up with also. A lot of the groups were very active with the different government groups. They tried to really become part of different committees and things in their government, so they had a voice. They were able to hear what was going on, and they knew. They also collaborated on events if they could, and there were a lot. I'll put them in the notes. There were a lot of them that they did that were really fabulous. And in fact, a lot of the people in our group were from all over the country, so we got a lot of different kinds of groups that people did with the government themselves. They worked on with local universities, some of them to look at their eco footprint and to look at ways to handle trash in a positive way, so that it wasn't just don't do this. It was, hey, let's create a program of composting and things so that it was fun. And one of the things that the media group did is that they even used orange buckets to collect everything so people could see who in their neighborhood was participating and feel good about their accomplishments. Let's see, should I go into the skills too, or are we just going to skip?
I think while you're at it, you keep going.
Okay. So when we went into skills, we just made a list. So group facilitation methodologies, and that's a lot of them. Pro-social, open space, all of those, looking at how we frame things so that, and I think John said a little bit about that too, listening for understanding the way that the audience frames things, and then framing it in a way that they can hear what you're talking about instead of feeling like you're trying to shove a new idea down their throats. So that takes some skill. One of the things that I kind of probably are tired of hearing me say this, but make it fun. And I mean, design it so it's more fun to do what you want them to do than the other options. And it takes a little bit of skill to do that. But if you look at the Volkswagen's thing, the fun theory, all of their videos on YouTube, people have come up with brilliant ways to make things fun. And it just goes really far. In fact, they don't even have to know why they're doing it. If it's more fun, they'll do it anyway. And then make sure that we acknowledge the accomplishments as they happen. So those, even the little baby steps, find ways to really acknowledge that so people can feel good about what they're doing. Okay.
I love that. Celebrating the successes is so key, even the smallest ones, right?
Yep.
How about from breakout group 3?
I can do that one. So we talked about barriers to feeling like what's going on in local government includes everyone. One barrier especially could be for people who aren't citizens. We talked about how it can be confusing to know which government bodies to go to for which topics. So I was thinking maybe a potential solution on that is to create working groups that consist of some people, and they who this is can rotate, maybe some people who are paying close attention to certain things and try to mobilize action like where it's possible, and some people who are more in the periphery who will volunteer to get more involved once those things are identified, and making like group calendars and group messaging. I kind of have a thing like that in EcoVista. But in Isla Vista, it's pretty simple. There's only 2 or 3 local governments. For some people, there's like 10. So it can get really complicated. We talked about that, and that it can be a barrier, that it can be really dry and confusing, right? So, and then Mark said the size of the community can affect all of these things. One of the accomplishments that Mark's group had was publicly owned utilities. So that could be a good thing to keep in mind to focus on. Something that's a lot smaller than that I forgot to bring up earlier is in Isla Vista, we normally have a community-owned free box that the Parks District allowed to be on their property. During COVID, it went down. So something I'm going to work on is getting that back better than before, ideally with a paid position to upkeep it. So that could be something to think about if that's possible where you all live, to get small wins, to be able to feel good and make it fun. Like Shaktari was saying. Angela or Mark, what did I forget?
Are there any other skills? Seems like you guys talked about accomplishments and some barriers, and then some potential project-oriented things to do.
The first skill I thought of is visioning, and ways to organize your community on that visioning, because our local county supervisors have admitted that government is bad at that, and they need us to do that for them.
Perfect. Thank you. Are we ready for group 4?
Sure.
Who's reporting out for group 4? Is that me? Oh my God, it's me. No wonder. Okay, so our group was really small. It was just me and Charles. And what we spoke a lot about was really how, you know, we mostly talked about how we could better work with government to collaborate versus pointing fingers and pushing or isolating them. And so I think it's just kind of, you know, how can you work with government so that you can be a lever for change, right? Was kind of what we were emphasizing in our group. And he was looking at, you know, how, you know, sometimes when you're showing up for city councils, like, are you showing up as your organization? Or are you showing up as a community member? And like, what are the different hats that you're wearing and how are you communicating that? And ultimately that the government needs us to push them. They want us to push them. And it's, you know, how are you showing up in an authentic way to move your government forward while still, you know, holding the integrity of your organization. So we talked a lot about that. And in terms of skills, you know, really kind of just around authentic relationship building and, you know, how do you invest the time and the energy in building relationships within your community, maybe with members that you haven't previously supported or worked with. And I think that's something that the government definitely needs help and support with and relies on grassroots to do. So I'll wrap that up. And then I think we have a little bit of time for group 5 to give us a couple gems.
Yeah, that was my group. We had an interesting array of interaction with local government. One was very much within a small town where local government is volunteer. And then another group had experience working with government at several scales, from the small and local all the way up to the city, and then up to conservation district and the county level. So there's collaboration there. And then another person in our group also spoke about the involvement of the university, the students at the university with the local government, and some difficult conversations there. And qua skills, we talked about a lot that's been said already, but mostly it was like perseverance, patience, perseverance, keep asking, keep showing up, show up in numbers and show up with all generations, and with a good representation of the concerns that are in the community as well.
Wonderful, thank you, Kat. And I apologize, we don't have a lot of time for the remaining groups, but if somebody'd like to report out some key gems from group 6.
I'll jump in just to say it was me from Eco Vista, so you don't need to hear more about that. But Janice from Fort Collins, Colorado, and I put a lot in the chat, in the document about our thoughts on this piece back.
Thank you. Anyone from group 7 like to report on anything that they gleaned?
I'll chime in. I'm thinking about like how many things got tried over the course of 20 years of permaculture by the transition movement. Some things worked, some things didn't. And the things you tried that, you know, I think we all have to take note that beautiful projects were tried and honor. I would say encourage young people to fail more at trying at bigger things, you know. But like I'm saying tree projects maybe or whatever. And yeah, we have the world to win, man. The government's finally catching on to the permaculture transition message, and there's big climate infrastructure bills maybe to fund it. So all these ideas we've been working on for years, we really should start writing more and working more with the government where they're available. Encouraging to Ash for working with his people in Isla Vista. That sounds good. Peace back.
Awesome. Thank you, Theo. And I believe there's one more group reporting out.
Yeah, group 8, it was Ayako, Paul, and Shelley. All three of us are actively engaged in working with local government. Ayako is about 5 to 7 people. They already have pollinator garden, repair cafes, crop swaps. They're doing repair trainings. Paul has been working in Columbus for over 10 years, actively engaged in sustainably related projects. I've been working with the city to create, with a group of people, another charrette, which we had 10 years ago and which led to a lot of sustainable actions.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Did you get all that, Marissa? The host
Yeah. Well, we have the recording. I was taking notes and we have your notes, and then we'll go through it all again and again and get all the good stuff harvested. So thank you so much. That sounded really rich, and I hope it was helpful for you all. And stay tuned, because we'll be working on, developing more resources, hopefully in partnership with Daily Acts and some of you who've been doing this amazing work in your communities. Do you just want to give a plug for the upcoming events that folks who are here tonight might be interested in?
Yeah, I can do that. So on May 25th, we're going to be having our next national networking strategy call. That's going to be a great one focused on disaster response and preparedness, looking at those things through the lens of community resilience. We had a great session this past Sunday at the Post-Capitalism Conference, and we'll look forward to sharing that with folks when the recording's available. And then on May 5th, so a little bit sooner here, I'm going to drop the link to the registration for a special edition of our Politics and Policy Working Group. This is going to be our cyber salon. I know when I'm in a meeting space with transitioners, I am in the company of geniuses. So we're going to be talking creatively about how we think about politics, like getting kind of meta and having a great time. David Cobb will be co-facilitating, so I definitely encourage you all to show up and have a great time. Thanks.
All right, thanks everybody. And I did request that my son appear now for those who asked to see him, but I guess he's not available, so maybe next time. Yeah, really appreciate you all taking the time to be here and sharing space with us and sharing your wisdom, and many thanks to Ash and Brianna.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night, everybody. Feel free to say goodbye if you want to unmute yourself.
Bye.
So long, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good one.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Bye, everybody.